Right, recording. Most executives try to fix fatigue with hacks. This could be cold showers, could be caffeine, energy drinks, or it could be productivity hacks. Blacking your screen and turn off your notifications, all that kind of stuff. And all that stuff has its place, but they're add-ons. They're the cherries on the top. They're not the fundamentals. So today I'm going to guide you through how you can get the edge, how you can separate yourself from being a good leader to a great leader, and make your job, your work, so much easier for yourself. I call this little system the engine check. What if so engine in terms of your metabolism, and this isn't just about burning calories. I'll get to that in a second. What if it's not about your calendar? What if it's about your chemistry, your biochemistry, your physiology? Often, high performers are very much in their head. And the more we're in our head, the less we're in our body. This is a battle that we're constantly trying to fight. Because we think to ourselves and we tell ourselves, I'm too busy. I'm too busy to do these things. And this is handicapping us in terms of our performance and our outcomes. So let me take you back to the whiteboard. And by the way, these sessions, these whiteboard sessions, are about 30 minutes in length because the average commute time is 59 minutes in the UK. I'm sure it's longer if you're watching this in America. So therefore, you can watch this listen either on the way home or on the way to work. And if you're at home or in the office now on your lunch break, put this on horizontal, listen to it, feel free to take notes. And at the end, I have a little assessment, a little quiz for you to complete, which you might find very, very helpful. So let's go back to the whiteboard. Now, the work you do and life itself can feel like you're climbing a mountain. When you climb this mountain, it can be made easier or harder depending on your engine. So if we draw two little stick figures here, let me get this out of the way. A second. This is one person. Okay, we'll call this person Sid. Do you know what? I've picked the name that no one has anymore. The last person called Sid was Sid Vicious, I believe. That's a fact. So that's Sid, and we're going to call him Sick Sid. Right? And this fella here, or lady, is Mike. More contemporary name. We're going to call him Metabolic Mike, or just Meta Mike for short. They're both on the same journey. They're both trying to get to the same summit. Entrepreneurs, executives, high performers. The difference between these two chaps, these two people, is that one of them is being weighed down. So you can't see it here from Sick Sid because he's not overweight. So therefore, if he's not overweight, where's the issue? You can still be metabolically very sick and not be overweight. And I'll go into that later on. So Sick Sid, he experiences brain fog. He experiences fatigue after lunch, sleepiness, digestive issues, which in turn lead to sleep problems. So he finds himself in a cycle where every time he wakes up, he slept, but he doesn't feel rested. On the other hand, Metabolic Mike, he's managed the fundamentals, which I'm going to go into in a moment. So when he eats, he doesn't feel tired afterwards. It gives him energy instead of taking it away. He doesn't need a nap in the car on his lunchtime. He goes into his afternoon meetings sharp, focused. He sleeps like a baby, and when he wakes up, he feels rested. He feels like he has tons of energy. And this is the difference. So we don't want to be a 6-id. We want to be a metabolic Mike. Now, back to the drawing board. Literally. The engine. I'm going to zoom out here. No, I should be all right, actually. Okay, so this is our engine. And we put things in it and we get things out of it. Now, the difference is it's an organic, we are organic beings. So when you hear people say things like food is just fuel, this is very narrow-minded. Like when I worked in the corporate world, I worked with an AI company. That was the last company officially I worked for. And I was a COO. So I was going around the office, talking to a lot of people, a lot of staff members, and these brilliant programmers who were some of the best in the industry, doing cutting-edge stuff. But they would treat their bodies like a machine. They'd be eating highly processed foods because to them it's just fuel. But in hindsight, it's the wrong type of fuel. Because eventually the system is going to break down if we're not giving it the things that it needs. So nutrition is actually only one of them. And I'm going to draw that now. Come on, Betsy. Let's make my pen a little bit bigger. Yeah, not too big though. Okay. Now, so we have, I've got to reset my ergonomics here because this mic is kind of in the way, but here we go. Sorry for the extreme close up on my face. Right, so going in, let's do this. A little arrow here. We have food. That's a shorter way of saying nutrition. Then we have our training. I'm also wondering, should I get some sort of platform for this tablet? But we'll figure out as we go. Let me move my camera a little bit. I'm leaning forward. There we go. Sleep. And I'm going to put in here stress as well. So these are all inputs into our engine. And these will decide what the outputs are. So the outputs are focus. Oh, wrong color. Focus. Energy. Oh man, come on. Energy, mood, and the final one is recovery. That says recovery. Let's make that a stronger C. Okay, so this is what comes out of what we put in, and all of these are determined by our engine. This is what is going to keep us going on the difficult days. And this is what we call our metabolism. So this is metabolism. It's not just about burning calories. Your metabolism is how well your body works, how well your body converts fuel into output. So yes, you will look better when you have a better metabolism, but you'll perform better, which is equally, if not more important. So let's go a bit more granular on this and see how we can have a system to know what we should be looking out for. So I call this a 10 signal system. I need to zoom out here a little bit. Oh, I'm getting good at this now. Right, that'll do. Zoom in a little bit. Yeah. The 10 signal system. So I'm going to run through this with you. And at the end, as I mentioned, there's a little quiz you can do, a little assessment. I'll show you how to get your hands on that. And you can then find out where do you stack up against these. So the 10 signals is 1, energy. So it matters because stable energy is what's going to help you not get those crashes. Essentially, when you eat food, any food, your body converts it into glucose. And there's different types of foods that cause different types of glucose spikes. Say, for example, steak is very low on the glucose index. In other words, when you eat steak, it doesn't spike your blood sugar level really high. But if you were to eat, say, for example, chocolate, especially something that's high in sugar, like dairy milk, that's going to spike your blood glucose level really high. So you get loads of energy, and then you have a massive crash after that. And you find yourselves peaking and troughing. Now, if that was your business, you wouldn't invest in it. Well, you wouldn't be confident about asking for investment if it was going up and down, up and down. What you want is a constant, there's always going to be fluctuations, but a constant going up and up and up. So throughout the day, you have more and more energy. Now, naturally, everyone has a different circadian rhythm, different cycle, and men and women are different in a respect because men tend to work on a 24-hour clock hormonally, and women work on a 28-day clock for obvious reasons. So a man will often experience a lot of energy first thing in the morning, around 5 a.m. is when testosterone peaks. But then they will experience a dip in the afternoon. So it's not that the food should be giving you a dip, but it's your hormones. And this, if we're working traditional hours, this can't be helped. You need to stay at work. But that's something for another day in terms of recovery, which I'll discuss. But one signal is how well does your body metabolize glucose? Are you able to focus and have good output after you eat, essentially? So, speaking of focus. Pay attention to how you feel and how you can focus after your meal, typically lunch. If you find it's really hard to focus, this is a sign of dysregulation. This is a sign that your body is not breaking down glucose. And this is really going to hinder your afternoon productivity. It could even mean you're pre-diabetic, because you don't have to be overweight to become diabetic. And in fact, where you carry weight is more important than how much weight you carry, which we'll get to in a second. Speaking of weight, cravings. Or let's just put this down as control. Do you feel like you constantly need energy top-ups? Do you feel like whenever you have a meal, you need something sweet afterwards? This is a sign of this is a sign of energy leaks. So this is like fuel coming out of your engine as you're driving. It's an inefficient way to run your body. Because these cravings are your body's ability or inability to break down the food. And this is a mixture of the type of food you're eating and your metabolic state. And you can tell how metabolically healthy someone is simply by their body composition. The more muscle and less fat they have, the better metabolism they have. It's not just about, like a six-pack is not just, culturally it is desirable, but that's just in the country you live in if you feel that way. But in other cultures, six-packs are not important. In fact, it's more, if you live in a country that experiences famine, then being overweight is desirable. Okay. Anyway, that's another conversation for another day. I'm going to put in here ready, because the next signal to look out for is Morning readiness. Now, if you're a fella, you probably know what I'm talking about. And if you're a lady, you probably know what I'm talking about. But how do you feel in the morning? Like, do you get out of bed? Do you wake up wanting to get out of bed? Do you wake up before your alarm? Because if you're experiencing constantly poor recovery, this is going to compound your decision fatigue. You'll find that during the day, you're not as decisive as you need to be for critical moments because you started the day in a haze. Right, where are we at? We're number 4. I said I keep it under half an hour. I'm doing my best. I'm going to just put in here fat. This is tying back to control. Where in your body do you store fat? As I mentioned about controlling cravings and being pre-diabetic, if you carry fat, actually I'm not going to ruin the surprise for you because it is part of the quiz that you'll be able to access in the description below. But where you carry fat in your body is really, really important. And there's something we call visceral fat. If you've done any kind of anatomy or physiology studies, then you probably know where that is. And this is the danger stuff around that area of the body. But don't cheat if you don't know where that is. Don't Google it. Next is your recovery. So do you feel like, let's move this over here a little bit. When you're finished in the gym, if you go to the gym, it takes you days and days to recover. Or if you travel a lot with your work, do you experience a lot of fatigue after travel? Does it take you ages to recover from jet lag, for example? Because if you're getting fatigue week on week, this is going to really strain your system and create a drain in your productivity. Because your body isn't able to bounce back from stressful situations, be they in the gym or the boardroom. Next is stress. Oops. Now with stress, we're focusing on the response to stress, because hopefully there are the stimuli happening in our business and our life, because it's bad things have nothing happening. But that gap between the stimulus and our response is what creates productivity and results. If we find that, say one of your team comes to you and they have a personal issue, or they have an issue with you, when you hear that news and you know you've got to make a decision or react, how is that space between? How do you respond? Because if you're living your day full of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, it's going to make you very reactive instead of strategic. You want to be strategic as a leader, not reactive. And if our metabolism isn't working well, then our stress response is going to be very, very poor. Okay, I'm going to put in here just digestive. Now, this is not referring to the lovely biscuit. This is referring to our gut health. Because one thing you'll hear people say to each other often is, or ask is, how are you? Common response is, yeah, I'm good, not bad. But no one ever asks, how many times have you been to the bathroom today? How have those experiences been? Where do you stand on the Bristol stool scale, if you know what that is? But poor gut health is a sign of systematic inflammation. When you have that, you have poor nutrient absorption. And that leads to poor cognitive performance. It's unavoidable. We have neuroreceptors in our gut. And this is why what happens in the gut has massive consequences directly to the head. Okay, now 2 more left. Muscle. Muscle. Now, when you hear the word muscle, you might think a bodybuilder. You might think Arnold Schwarzenegger, because that is the impact of marketing. And if you're around the same age as me, I'm 43 and a half at the moment, then you may remember back in the 80s, it was all about He-Man and Lionel and Thundercats and G.I. Joe, and that was what to be muscular looked like. And with the advent of steroids, we tend to think, okay, I'm not interested in building muscle because I don't want to be a bodybuilder. But in fact, muscle is your biggest metabolic asset. Because the more muscle you have, the higher your metabolic rate, resting metabolic rate. In other words, back to the analogy of a car, if you have a Mini Cooper sitting there at the traffic lights, or you have an SUV, which one requires the most fuel just with the engine running? The SUV or the Range Rover. And that's because it's a bigger machine. So the more muscle mass you have, muscle requires more energy than fat does. And simply being leaner, having more muscle tone, means that when you eat food, especially if it's higher in sugar, it gets converted into glucose, but that goes to the muscle. And your body processes the glucose a lot better. So being lean isn't just aesthetically desirable, but it's desirable for performance as well, and how your mind works, how well you metabolize food. So when you train, if you train, you should be focused on building muscle. That's the priority, especially as you age. Last one is responsiveness. It's a long one. I won't be able to fit it in. I'll just put in respond. If you can hear my kids there, apologies for that. They're playing in the garden. And if they knock on the door, sometimes I have to cut these because the kids knock on the door. And you're not here for that, are you? So, but so far, so good. If you were to tighten up your nutrition and training, if you got yourself in check, we're going to the gym 3 times a week, eating well, how quickly do you think you'd see results or changes in your body composition, in your energy? Because slow or minimal responses suggest a slow or poor performing metabolism. They are suggesting that you have an imbalance of your hormones. And our hormones are changing constantly. But what we do affects the balance. And one of the best things you can do for testosterone, which is a critical hormone for men and women, but for anyone who wants to perform, because higher testosterone makes us more bold. Not as in being the naughty corner, but more aggressive. And when I say aggressive, I don't mean violent. As in the Latin word aggressio, I believe it is, which means to take on things. And if you're an entrepreneur, to undertake things. So testosterone is the get up and go hormone. So if your testosterone is higher, you'll notice this because when you work out and eat well, your body responds quickly. I don't know how we're doing for time here. I was going to keep a timer, but I didn't. So, yeah, you can listen to this in 2 or 3 parts. Or watch. And let's move it down. Aha! The executive paradox. So, We're going to go back to Sid and Mike. Let's draw these two peeps here. This is old Sid. Sydney. And then this is Mike. I'm going to give him a slightly bigger head. Just because he's feeling good about himself because I bigged them up earlier. And I'm going to underline Sid in red and Mike in green. Okay. So these are two executives, Sid and Mike. And there is key differences between them. Not in their genetics, not in their looks, in their behaviors, in their habits. Now, Sid, he does coffee. You know what he does? 4 a day. 4 coffees. Because it gives him energy, which is good, right? He doesn't have time to work out. He's too busy. Why work out when you can be preparing for the next meeting? No, I'm going to have to go up here. You know what? You know what's called the executive. No, you'll go up here. Okay, he gets foggy at 2 p.m. It's normal, right? You know, the afternoon slump everyone talks about. Even feel this like during the week. Your hump day on Wednesday. He's snappy under pressure. And on the weekend, if I can fit it in here, he has a crash. So he's not able to enjoy time with the missus, with the kids at the weekend because he needs to rest. He's not able to keep up on the golf course because he had a long week at work. He doesn't work out because he's too busy working. You know, he's not a gym guy. He's not a bodybuilder. He's there to make money, which is fair enough. He's under pressure. He has his 4 coffees a day because if he doesn't, he'll get a headache. He's snappy, but this is kind of disguised as authoritative. He's someone who takes himself and his work very seriously. And he's foggy in his afternoon, so sometimes he'll go for a nap in the car when he's feeling a bit knackered. Now, on the other hand, we have Mike. Now, Mike is not a gym rat, but he has constant movement. So Mike gets his steps in, 10,000 steps per day. So after he eats his lunch, he doesn't eat it at the desk. He goes outside the office to have the lunch, and therefore he has to walk back to the office. So he doesn't get a slump. No slumps. He is calm under pressure. Remember I talked about the peaks and the troughs of your blood glucose sugar, blood sugar levels, right? We don't want that. We don't want to be going up and down, up and down. We want to be nice and calm, consistent. So we land that big client, great. We're not like, yeah, or we lose that big client, no. Everything's, yeah, great. That's how it goes. Take the rough with the smooth. Nothing rocks you when you're the lead and you're looking after people, because they'll follow your reactions. They'll follow what you do, not what you say. And he recovers fast. So that means when he's done his 3 workouts in his week, or just got his steps in every day, the bare minimum, when it comes to the weekend, he's ready to go. And that means he enjoys his weekend and is as productive as his weekdays are. his work days. So there's a clear distinction here. Who's the higher performer? It's old Mike. And it's not because it doesn't run, like, this stuff doesn't run in the family. It's habits. My writing is terrible. Okay. What it all boils down to. What we do in our program, The Executive Edge, is we do an assessment or a quiz to go through the 10 signal system to find out how you score. And it is quantitative, slightly qualitative as well. But this data is going to give you a snapshot of where you're at and help you to understand that gap between where you're at now and where you could be. So down below, you'll find my Instagram. And if you just DM me the word engine, I'll send it to you. I'll send you the test. And if you're not on Instagram, then I'll put the link below to do the test. So I hope that was helpful. And the next video, which leads on from this, is going to be, if I've uploaded it, in this corner right here. Okay. Thank you for your attention, and catch up with you next time.